This beanie, although it looks a little complicated to make, is in fact very easy and quick. The ribbed brim is back loop only single crochet, making the beanie nice and stretchy. The main body of the beanie is Tunisian crochet weave stitch using 2 colours, and the domed crown is made using Tunisian crochet simple stitch with reductions. The green yarn is 100% acrylic and chunky, recommending a hook size of 6mm, and the purple yarn is of a similar gauge. The project can be completed easily with a 100-gram ball and should take around 3 hours from start to finish. For a 3-inch deep ribbed brim, I'm going to chain 9 with a turning chain, so that's 10, using a 6.5mm ordinary crochet hook, leaving a very long tail for slip stitching. Then make a ribbed brim using back loop only single crochet. That's the US terminology. British terminology is double crochet. And to save time, the video about how to do a back loop only rib with a single crochet is above. The length of the rib looks about right to me, so I'm just going to measure it. And when the length is as required, the Tunisian crochet foundation row can then be created. So what I'm doing is bringing up loops using an 8mm Tunisian crochet hook that I shall be using for the rest of the project, and the video about how to create a Tunisian crochet foundation row on a ribbed brim is above to save time. But for this project I'm going to do Tunisian crochet weave stitch, and that requires an even number of stitches, so I need to make sure there are an even number of loops on the hook. I have almost completed casting on of the Tunisian crochet foundation row, and the next thing I shall do is to check the number of loops on the hook. I have 58 loops on the hook, and you can always add or lose a loop to make the number even. Now chain 1, mark the stitch at the end of the row and do a normal Tunisian crochet return pass. And the video on how to do a Tunisian crochet return pass is above. I'm just completing the return pass, and the next thing to do is to start the forward pass with the Tunisian crochet weave stitch, and I'm now going to introduce the new colour, and it is a purple that contrasts nicely with the green. And when there are 2 loops left on the hook, grab the new yarn with the hook and pull through both loops, leaving 1 loop of the new colour on the hook. So with the purple yarn in front of the green yarn, I'm going to do the Tunisian crochet slip stitch purled, which is the first stitch of the weave stitch. I am bringing the purple yarn in front of the green yarn and moving the purple yarn forward with the crochet hook, and now inserting the hook under the front vertical bar of the second stitch. And now move the hook anti-clockwise over the purple yarn to create the purl. So that is the slip stitch purled. The third stitch is a Tunisian crochet simple stitch, again with the purple yarn, and alternate with Tunisian crochet slip stitch purled and Tunisian crochet simple stitches, and so on until the end of the row, working a simple stitch into the marked stitch space. For a fuller description of how to do the weave stitch, there is a link to the video above. I'm approaching the end of the first forward pass, and the last stitch will be a normal simple stitch into the marked space at the end of the row. Now chain 1, mark the space at the end of the row, and do a normal Tunisian crochet return pass. I'm now completing the first return pass of the weave stitch, and when there are 2 loops left on the hook, introduce the first colour again. So with the green yarn in front of the purple yarn, I'm grabbing the green yarn, pulling it through both purple loops to leave 1 loop of green yarn on the hook. On the previous row, the first stitch was a slip stitch purled, so the first stitch on this row is a simple stitch. Now for the third stitch, do a Tunisian crochet slip stitch purled, next stitch is a simple stitch, next stitch is a Tunisian crochet slip stitch purled, alternating stitches all the way along the row to the end. And the simple stitches go into the purled stitches, and the purled stitches go into the simple stitches. Now approaching the end of the second forward pass, and I'm going to work a simple stitch into the marked space at the end of the row, and as usual I shall chain 1, mark the space, and do a normal Tunisian crochet return pass. Towards the end of the return pass, and the next forward pass will be the same as the first forward pass, starting with a Tunisian crochet slip stitch purled. So towards the end of the return pass, when there are 2 loops of green yarn on the hook, grab the purple yarn with the hook and pull through to leave 1 loop of purple yarn on the hook. And the first stitch is a slip stitch purled. The stitch after that is a Tunisian crochet simple stitch. The stitch after that is a Tunisian crochet slip stitch purled, and so on until the end of the row. And keep going, changing the colour for every forward pass until the fabric is of the length required before reducing for the dome of the beanie. So I recommend a depth of fabric of about 6 inches. Before starting the reduction, that will be another 3 inches, so that will create a beanie that is 9 inches from top to bottom. So that size beanie will just cover the ears. For a more slouchy beanie, add another inch or 2, especially if you want to fold the brim over. When this return pass is completed, I'm going to check the length of the fabric, and when it is 6 inches I shall start the reduction. I've now completed the main body of the beanie, and I'm going to start the reduction just using the green yarn. So when there are 2 loops of purple yarn on the hook, I'm grabbing the green yarn with hook, pulling it through the loop to leave 1 loop of green yarn on the hook. And now I'm going to do 5 Tunisian crochet simple stitches. The loop on the hook counts as the first stitch, so I need to do 4 more Tunisian crochet simple stitches. This is the 5th stitch, and now for the first reduction. So insert the hook under the front vertical bars of the next 2 stitches, yarn over and pull up a loop, and just continue with 5 Tunisian crochet simple stitches and then 2 together all the way along the row, followed by a normal return pass. I'm just completing the return pass, and the next forward pass is going to be Tunisian crochet simple stitches without any reductions. Followed by a normal return pass. I'm now completing the return pass, and the next forward pass is going to be a reduction, but this time after every 4 stitches. So the first loop on the hook is the first stitch, so I need to do 3 more Tunisian crochet simple stitches, so there are 4 loops on the hook, and now 2 stitches together by inserting the hook under the front vertical bars of the next 2 stitches, yarn over and pull up a loop. Now 4 simple stitches, and then 2 simple stitches together, and so on until the end of the row, followed by a normal return pass. I'm now approaching the end of the next return pass, and the next forward pass is going to be Tunisian crochet simple stitches into each stitch without any reductions, followed by a normal return pass. So this is the end of the next return pass, and the next forward pass is going to be 2 together after every 3 stitches, so 2 simple stitches together when there are 3 loops on the hook, then 3 simple stitches, and then 2 together, etc. until the end of the row, and then do a normal Tunisian crochet return pass. This is the end of the next return pass, and the next forward pass is going to be 1 simple stitch into each stitch with no reductions, followed by a normal return pass. This is the end of the next return pass, and the next forward pass is going to be 2 simple stitches followed by 2 simple stitches together until the end of the row, followed by a normal return pass. I'm now approaching the end of the return pass, And the next forward pass is going to be one simple stitch followed by 2 simple stitches together all the way along the row. So the loop on the hook counts as the first stitch, so the next is 2 stitches together. Now one simple stitch and 2 simple stitches together all the way along the row to the end, followed by a normal return pass. So this is the end of the next return pass, and the forward pass is now going to be 2 simple stitches together all the way along the row to the end. So when this forward pass is completed, I'm going to do a normal return pass, but keep the stitches fairly tight to avoid any holes appearing at the top of the beanie. This is the end of the return pass, and the forward pass is now going to be ordinary crochet slip stitches. So I'm going to change to a 6.5mm crochet hook and just do slip stitches all the way along the top, just to make the top of the beanie neat. So these are ordinary crochet slip stitches and not Tunisian crochet slip stitches. Again, I like to pull the stitches fairly tight, or else little holes can appear at the top of the beanie. And with the slip stitching completed, I'm now going to secure the loop with a stitch marker, so it can check the beanie for size and height. This is what it looks like, nicely domed at the top, and I'm now going to turn the work inside out so I can slip stitch the edges together. I like to use slip stitch rather than sew the edges together because I find the seam is always acceptable, and also it makes the beanie easy to pull out if any changes need to be made. So with my 6.5mm crochet hook, I'm just going to slip stitch all the way up the edges of the beanie. Top tip: leave a very long piece of yarn diagonally opposite the working yarn when making the ribbed brim, because then you will have enough yarn to slip stitch all the way to the top. In this case my tail of yarn was not long enough, so I actually had to join another piece of yarn to finish the slip stitching. Reaching the top of the beanie where the stitch marker is, and at this stage the beanie can be tried on for fit and appearance. If everything is okay, the yarn can be cut and the hole at the top of the beanie can be cinched to close it, and any loose ends of yarn sewn in to secure them. So this is the Tunisian crochet weave stitch beanie. I think it looks great, particularly with the nicely contrasting purple and green. The reduction using Tunisian crochet simple stitch makes a very nice dome at the top of the beanie, saving both yarn and time. And this is what the weave stitch looks like close up. And I think it is really enhanced with two colours.